voltage. making your way to the seats, please. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Welcome to the London Tug, and I firstly want to say welcome back. Like we're here. So before I get started, I want everyone to stand up. And now, if you've attended a London Tug before, regardless of where it was, can you sit down? So wow, everyone there in the room. So thank you everyone for coming, and really, really appreciate it. And welcome to your first tug. You can sit down now. So we're actually going to do a little bit of a recap of the London Tug. We're not new by any means. So I want to talk a little bit about our history and what we're all about. Before I do that, I'm just going to talk about our leaders. So there's 5 of us that run the Tug. So you've got myself, Sarah Bartlett, then we've got Laura Sanford, who's waving over there. If you haven't seen Laura and been checked in yet, please go and see her and make sure you're all checked in. Salesforce have told us we must check everyone in, so please do that if you haven't already. We have David Perez, who is somewhere there. And we have Pablo, who is filming the event tonight. Hi to everyone on YouTube. And we have Paul Chapman, who unfortunately couldn't make it, but yeah. So in terms of the London Tug history, I was trying to do some detective work this week to figure out when we were actually founded, because I'd heard all these stories and I wasn't quite sure, when we were established. So I managed to put together this timeline with the help of a few people. And whilst doing this, I found out that this tug was actually founded by Andy Copgrave, which I had no idea about. So if you don't know Andy, he works for Tableau. He's the Chief Technical Evangelist. And then Andy told me a really funny story about the first ever tug. So there's a blog post out there. It was in 2009, and Pat Hanrahan was the speaker. So for those that don't know who Pat Hanrahan is, he's actually one of the co-founders of Tableau, and he used to work at Disney Pixar, or Pixar as it was back then. So he's actually credited in the Toy Story credits. And anyway, so Andy was telling me this funny story about the night that they had this tug. Pat's laptop went wrong, he had no slides, and he had to wing it. And then they had loads of beers afterwards. So it sounded like a fun evening. But I thought that was a really great story, and there's a blog post out there all about this event. And so it was in 2011, not 2019. But yeah, there's a blog post out there, and it says that this was the first ever tug. Now, since then, Andy Kriebel was claimed that he was the first person to establish a tug in Atlanta because he took a few people down to the pub for a few beers. So, you can make up your own mind. But we've had some great events over the years. So I don't have any pictures of the earlier days, like when Paul and Nick were leading it. But I have some pictures of more from 2017 onwards, and we have had some great speakers over that time. So back in 2017, we had Cole Netflix, so she's the author of Storytelling with Data. She's actually spoken at this tug twice, and it's been really great. We had the first ever Speed Tips Battle with Lorna. So if some of you have been to conference or watched the virtual conference, you've probably seen Lorna and Anne Jackson going at it with the Speed Tips Battle. That was actually founded at London Tug, so that was a lot of fun. We've had Francois Argenstadt a few times, so he's the Chief Product Officer of Tableau. He's been a regular speaker, I think he's probably been here 2 or 3 times. Back in 2017, we hosted Jacob Usufka, Chloe Seng and Russell Spangler. and Neil Richards, and I think Neil Richards is here somewhere. Yeah, hey Neil. You feature a few times tonight. You've spoken quite a few times, but they were over for the Information is Beautiful Awards. So the three of them, excluding Neil, sorry, were nominated for an Information is Beautiful award. And this was around the time that Chloe founded Biz for Social Good. So she actually spoke about the project she was launching, and that's since become a really major project in the community. In 2017, we had our first ever Big Viz quiz right here, where you are tonight. So this is typically something we run around Christmas time. It's a lot of fun. So that was the first one we did. We hosted Francois Argesat again in 2018 with Nye Loza. Both of them are Canadian, so we ran a Canadian themed tug. And we also had Matt Francis speak at that event too. We've run a Makeover Monday live session with Andy and Eva. Again, that was a lot of fun. We had PATH come in and we visualized a malaria data set. We hosted a data journalism panel back in 2018 with Alan Smith, Valentina Di Filippo and Alberto Cairo. So that was incredible. Really good to hear them and their insights. And just to get Alberto here was just amazing. We hosted a summer party up on the roof of this building back in 2018, and we actually managed to get the visuals from the conference that year and have our own little Viz gallery on the wall. That was really, really fun. We had Ryan Sleeper and Neil Richards again in 2018. I've got no idea what you're looking at out the window, but I thought it was a good picture. So that was a lot of good fun. We had the Data Dev Hackathon, so we've got Lillian and Tristan there posing in their little data dev outfits. And more recently we had the Data Viz debate with Andy Cockreeve and Andy Kirk. So this is where they went head to head and debated different Data Viz topics. If you can see in the background, there's we did I think Tableau, you made this with the boxing match thing. It was just loads of fun. I think Laura, you hosted it, right? Yeah. You can probably watch it back, I think it was recorded. And then we had another Big Viz quiz in 2019, and that was over at the Information Lab. And then our most recent in-person tug was in February 2020 over at Expedia. On that night we had Fee Gordon, Mike Cisneros, and Mark Reed speak, and I think Mark's here. Give us a wave. Hey, Mark. So little did we know back then that that would be our last one in however many years. So I thought it would be nice to just to give a little recap to this event. You know, there is a lot of history behind it. So in terms of the London community, I just wanted to give a bit of an intro to the community that are in London. We have a huge community here of very enthusiastic Tableau people. We actually have 10 visionaries based in or around London, so I wanted to give those a shout out. We've got a few in the room. Put your hand up if you're a visionary. We also have 27 London-based ambassadors. So can you stand up if you're an ambassador? So yeah, so if you have any Tableau questions, these are the people you want to go and speak to. And then I've shared this. This is the Zero Project Viz by Josh Chapley. So this is a Viz where you can go and learn more about the community. You can put in like countries and cities and just figure out where people are. So if you are looking for anyone in the London Tableau community, or maybe you're looking to recruit people, this is really a great place to start. And you'll find it on Josh Chapley's Tableau public profile. I've included the link here, and we will share the slides out after this event. And I wanted to ask as well, if anyone's hiring tonight, can you stand up? Can't take any more people, come on. So if you are looking for a job, I'd encourage you to go and speak to these people after this event and just learn more about the roles that they're hiring for.
Is it worth saying the companies? Is it worth saying the companies?
Yes, so David's is Expedia Group, CACI, JLL, and then Southern Health NHS, okay? It's not a competition. So in terms of keeping in touch with us, probably the best way is via LinkedIn. So we have a company page on LinkedIn. If you go and find it, you can join us. We'll always post our events on there. If you are signed up to this event tonight, you automatically get added to a subscription list. So if we have another event, you should get a notification that that event's happening. And then you can follow us using the hashtag London Tug. And if you are going to share any pictures tonight or anything, please do use the hashtag so we can track them and promote your tweets. And that applies to both LinkedIn and Twitter. So in terms of the agenda for today, we're going to kick off with a presentation from Will Sutton, who is the Ambassador champion for 2022. So Will is going to be talking to us about delivering knockout presentations with Tableau. And then after that, we'll be joined by Priya Padham, who's over here. Priya is a Tableau Ambassador, and she's going to be talking to us about the lessons learned in design. And then finally, we're going to be joined by Irene Diomi. She's also a Tableau Ambassador. And she's going to be talking about how to make your data stand out with colours. And then once we've wrapped up the talks, we'll have plenty of time for networking, and there'll be some pizzas at the end as well. So we officially have to be out of here by 9 p.m. So the sooner we get done with the talks, the sooner we'll have pizza and drinks. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Will, and you can take it over from here.
Hello. Hello. You can hear me. Hi everyone. Today I'm Will. I'm here to talk to you about delivering knockout presentations with Tableau. Have you ever been in one of those situations where you put together a really great dashboard, loads of interactivity, lots of functionality in there, and then some stakeholder has gone and taken a screenshot of it and put it in a PowerPoint presentation? You know the feeling. You've spent all that time and energy, really formatted those tooltips nicely, and all that data is lost, and it's just up to the presenter then just to carry on the work. Well, today I want to provide you a technique that I use about delivering PowerPoint-style dashboards in Tableau. So about me, I'm Will. I'm a senior data analyst at World Remit. It's a fintech company about supporting the migrants sending money home to their families with an app. I've been a Tableau user for 8 years, do a bit of coding as well, but I joined the Data Fam community around about 3 years ago to really level up my skills. And I really improved slowly but surely, and then that got me to the Ambassador stage last month. And that's where our story starts, because Ambassador, I think, is a competition like no other. I didn't believe how big it was, but it is the biggest data visualization competition in the world. I've entered it twice now. It's a superb learning opportunity. Whatever you do, you can look at your work, you can look at other people's work, you really learn something through it. There's 2 rounds of competition, so there's a general feeder, and then from that, they pick 3 to go on to the final. And for me, this was the scene in a film that most represented what it was like to be picked. So if you've ever seen Rocky, I will explain it. Rocky is like an amateur boxer. He's just doing it in his spare time to earn money. But then he suddenly brought in and said, hey, we're going to give you a shot at the title against a heavyweight champion. Like, what? Me? And then so many thoughts go through your head, as with mine. Like, oh, you've got a live audience? What, thousands of people? Like, okay. And then you see the competition, like, oh, crumbs. Because there's some people that I really look up to in the community, and now I've got to compete against them. And then you see the data set, you're like, I know absolutely nothing about education data. I've never worked with it before, and I've got to build something on it. And combined with other things going on in my life about trying to find a house, having redundancies at work, there's lots going around in my head at the time. And I knew that this wasn't the right mindset. This isn't going to lead to anything positive. So I had to take some steps to try and get better, which was leaving the country. So they always say, don't run from your problems, and I can agree, driving is much more effective. So I went to Wales, I rented a little glamping pod, which was like a shed in Snowdonia. And this was really a place for me as an introvert just to really like disconnect from the problems and really focus a bit more and get a bit more energy and get fired up to really give this competition it's a great opportunity and give it everything I needed. So there I was on the mountainside, going back over these thoughts in my head, and like, well, the live audience, well, if I survive this, no presentations are going to scare me again. I mean, Sarah asked me to come tonight, I was like, yeah, sure. Like, 100 people, like, there's nothing. Then thinking about the competition, it's like, yeah, they're great, and I'm not going to be able to stop that, but this is an opportunity for me to show off what I could do with Tableau, show off some of my skills, what I can bring to the table, in front of many people. And about education, I actually saw this as an advantage. So I don't know any of the jargon associated with education data sets. I don't know any of the metrics. So there were metrics in there that I just didn't understand. I didn't understand that even after they'd been explained to me. I'm like, no one else is going to know this either. So it really helped me create a message that I could relate to and certainly non-experts could understand as well. So there I was, fired up, like ready to go to change my mindset. Back in the competition, so the feeder and the final are two quite different opponents to face down against. So with the feeder, you are given that topic, you bring your own data set, and you've got about a month to pull something together. For the final, yeah, you're still given a topic, but you're given the data set, which is somewhat helpful, but you know, you can't add anything to it. So you've really just got to work with what you got and build a story out of that. You've got 3 weeks, you're also given an assistant, a supervisor. Mark Bradbourne was an amazing supervisor, hands down the best. And then you've got to recreate your work in 20 minutes on stage and then present your work for 4 minutes. And it was this presentation side that really drove what I was doing in terms of the design and the lookout and what I was going to build in the end. And I can show you this by the comparison of what I did for the feeder versus the final. So in the feeder is much more of a long-form interactive piece that you sort of hand over to the user. In the final, it's a different approach. It's I'm in control. Much like presenting here, I can decide how fast we're going to go or how slow we're going to go in terms of this presentation. So what I would say for this is, really with the feeder, when you're passing that over, the user controls the content. They control how fast they're going to go through it, how slowly they want to go, but as a presenter, you've got the great control over like what they see, but great responsibility as well, because you've got to keep them engaged. And when we think about this engagement, I had to break it down into a few steps. So you've got to understand what drives the audience. So I went away thinking that my audience is going to be educators and members of the general public. So then I didn't know where to start, so I started with TED Talks. I watched loads of TED Talks, just had it on the background, just understanding what they were talking about, how they were saying it, really the context of how they were delivering the messages. There's really key things that came out that they always focus on, like the impact they were having on a human life. It wasn't a case of saying, like in business, talking about KPIs going up and down, like how can we increase churn, like decrease churn by 10%. It wasn't any of that. And very little numerical data they shared. So this wasn't a case of like it was 20% or 30%. They just said, oh, it just increased. They were really focused on the impact they were having with education and the importance of the possibilities of everyone can have this. So the takeaways for me were, if I'm going to talk about this, I've got to talk about the people. I've really got to stress what the impact is, and I've got to try and drill it down to a simple core message. I can jump ahead a bit and give you a bit on this as an example. So when I'm talking about that core message, when I was reviewing the data, I came up with this insight that, countries that improve youth literacy also see increases in other economic metrics. So if I see that as an analyst, but for my audience, I might say, literacy doesn't just benefit the student, but it benefits everyone around them, which really is much more of a personal kind of twist on this, less jargon, just more to the people and the impact it's having. So now we've got an idea of how people think, how our audience are going to think. It's going to be what insights are going to matter to that audience. So this was the data set. How it sort of went was you had several different metrics. You had variations of the same metrics. So you could have literacy in four or five different ways from different providers, different SKUs, scuts of the data, and very much varying data quality. So if you see the chart on the right, you can see that it talks about female youth literacy, but you can probably guess there's only 3 data points there over 12 years. And then I thought about this and thought, well, does this matter? in the context of what my audience wants. And then I thought about it a bit more, and well, that audience wants to understand that human impact, and I want to try and make this data relatable to them. So it's really helped me pick some metrics for them. So understanding that, hey, you know, I can pick metrics that are going to let me talk about gender, let me talk about people's age or locations. And really, like this chart on the right, there's a lot. You know, it's not very helpful, but what you can actually just say is, did literacy increase over these years? And yes, it did. So you could just have that as a simple message of, yeah, female youth literacy increased in Madagascar, and then lead into what that impact was. So I found many different insights, bits and pieces of varying granularity. So talk about things at global, things at a gender level, things at a country level. But it's all about trying to make these insights relative and relatable to my audience. So if I'm talking about a global story, I can actually put members of the audience in that story and talk about them. If I'm talking about gender, in this case women, there's going to be a woman in everybody's life, you know, a mother, a sister, a wife, etc., all themselves. So you can make a much more personal connection with that. And countries as well were a great way to tell different perspectives. Like saying you grew up in the UK, but if you grew up in Thailand, this is what your life would look like. So, getting on to how can I actually build this in Tableau. So I have this story, I have these thoughts of different things going on, I have the typical dashboard layout, or I have this kind of presentation style that I'm kind of thinking, maybe this works for this audience. So what I ended up obviously doing was the presentation style, and this is mainly because I had a lot of short stories, but I needed a bit of flexibility in my storytelling. So there was cases where I needed to jump out to the whole population, jump back into some detail, jump back to a population. And it's much easier for my audience to focus. So even on this top dashboard, when people are looking out on the screen, you could be in all kinds of places. Some of you may be in this map at the top or the bar chart at the bottom. And so I might just be talking about the bands at the top at that stage. But having just one focus point on the screen means that that's all you're going to see for now, and I can reveal a bit more later on. But how can I build this in Tableau? So I have a quick demo for you. I just want to also say special thanks to Adam Miko for helping me review this work, correcting all my bad grammar. So in this tutorial I put together on Tableau Public, you can download all the content for it from a Google Drive, which you can do. I have already done that for you, so it takes a little bit less time. So we're just going to connect to data quickly. So I have 3 text files in the tutorial, and we're going to pick a slide index. So when I talk about a slide index, this is a really simple data set. So this is just a column that says slide, and then 1 to the number of slides in your presentation, which you can bring into the dashboard. So what the technique I did uses is it builds on this concept of background maps, background images on maps, which was an old functionality in Tableau back when I started version 8.1. So what it builds on is a scatter plot. So what we're going to do is build a fake scatter plot and put a background image on it, which I can do really quickly. So if I say create a calculate field, call it row, call it min2, just to give it number 2. I can then duplicate that. And rename it to column. Put that on there, put that on there. So I have a pretty rubbish scatter plot. I can then edit the axes to between 1 and 0. So I've got a scatter plot with nothing on it. So now I can go, it's a map at the top. Under background images, you get slide index, your data set. So now I can add images to this dashboard, or to this sheet. So I can pick a file URL. So I can go and pick one of my slides pre-made in Figma. So now I can then suggest where it's going to lie on the scatter plot. So it wants to slide between 0 and 1, 0 and 1. And I can click apply. So now I've got an image in as a background. But if I want to create more than one, what I can do is use this slide field just to create a parameter to then say which slide I want to show at each time. So I take slide, I'm going to convert it to dimension, then I'm going to create a parameter. I'm going to change it to range and step size 1. Then I'm going to show that parameter. So we have the nice slider along here. And then I'm going to also create a calculated field to say when the slider is like the parameter slider, just show that. And set that to true. I'm also going to add slider pages in case I want to do any animation later. Get rid of these headers. Now I just need to add in the other background images. So on the background images, we can take this previous one we've done, but we need to add an option to change it. So under here, there was a tab options that I never knew existed until this competition. So under options, there's a little box that says only show when, and you can click add, you can click slide, and then you can click 1. Okay, and then now I can just add another image. We're only going to do a few. I'm not going to do all 40. That might be a bit deep. I'm not doing Ironbird standard again.
You have 20 minutes, Will.
Yeah.
I'll do 3 then. Slide 2, 3. Okay. Okay, so I've got my images, the conditions are set. So now, hopefully, yeah. So I fast forward on the parameter. Yeah, so now I can effectively build a presentation based on some images. I can now bring that out into a dashboard. So always delete the phone container or layout. And we will go for PowerPoint layout. So what I'm going to do is bring this sheet in as floating. With that, want to keep that. Get rid of this pages one. Hide the title. Hey, that looks better. Under layout, I'm just going to move it to 0.0. Click back 0 and change the width to the full size of the image. Okay. I'm just going to tidy up this parameter as well. Give it a readout. Get out of the header. Make it a bit bigger. Right. Okay. So this is great. So now I can have a dashboard where we can page through different images. But one of the fundamental parts of this is that you can actually bring in that data set again. So you can bring in, I put together quite a crude line chart of sample data just to prove that you can do it. So just a quick data set of line and a metric. So under here we can add year, we can add a metric. So we've got a line chart, cool. And then we can add this to the sheet. So if you've used parameters before, you will know that you can change this. So if I'm paging back and forth, this line chart isn't going to move. But I can use a technique called a sheet selector. So I can just say, under slide parameter, I'm going to create a calculated field. I'm going to say, only do this when it's on slide 3. And put that under filters and select true. Cool. So now if I page back, it should disappear. You will need to hide titles. But other than that, you can have a presentation like PowerPoint with Tableau charts. One thing I will say, you do want to change these map options. So like a map, you can zoom in, zoom out, which is not great. So if you go into map options, you'll get these little options. So you just untick all of them. And now if I scroll, nothing happens. All I can do is page back and forth. Okay, that's my little quick demo. Where are we? So yeah, that's the demo. I've got a little Tableau public QR code here, so you can go and have a link there to that, so you can see that tutorial. But there's also a really interesting technique shared at Tableau conference, which was data stories in 22.2. So the example here, the small little chart, is about Feeding America, where they presented, hey, here's my chart, but also on the right-hand side, it gives you a text summary of what's going on with the data set. So this could be like a really nice way. So if you're building out a PowerPoint deck type style and you have to write those bullet points, you could actually get Tableau to do the bullet points as well. So now you could automate having charts and the insights on screen to really cut down the amount of time you would have to do, say, monthly reporting decks, which I think is really cool. I'm looking forward to trying it out. Okay, how long have we got? Do you want to go for a bonus?
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, so last week I was asked about storytelling, and I also watched Top Gun, and it got me thinking, could I bring the two together? So this is a little bonus section that is a bit of an idea in my head about can we use direction from films to teach us about storytelling? Because, I mean, I might not be flying a fighter jet, but I'm still telling a story. So when I think about it, data visualization and storytelling are kind of different things when we kind of think about them, but we've always put them together. So in data viz, we're trying to say, hey, here's a table of results, and we turn this into a graph that we can really understand, like give us an insight of which ones are the biggest, which are the smallest, really speeding up the speed, give us a speed to insight. With storytelling, it's not quite the same. So there is a film a long time ago put out called The Titanic. It's about a boat. It made an awful lot of money, but it takes over 3 hours to watch. But what if I could tell you that you could actually watch that film in just a few seconds? We're going to watch that film right now. Oh, we lost the sound. See, you can play it again. I missed out the sound, sorry. Yeah. It's so quick, you can watch it twice.
But this ship can't see.
So, as you agree, you've taken something which is a very tragic, heartbreaking film and turned it into a comedy. So I would suggest that here we can learn that storytelling faster is not always more effective. And we can learn a bit more from films. So when I dived in a bit deeper, I found that they have this thing called a 3-act structure. You can kind of think of it as a beginning, middle, and end. Where in the beginning we're setting up our different characters. We then put in some drama in the second act with some rising stakes, doing some action. And then we come to an end point with a crisis or a moment where we're fighting the bad guy or setting up for a sequel or something. But we can see this in many films, and this is one of the things I saw on Top Gun. I don't want to ruin it, but we'll go for Harry Potter instead. So in the setup, there's Harry Potter. He gets visited by Hagrid and said, "You're a wizard, Harry." Then we're into this world of Act 2 on the confrontation where he's fighting trolls, playing Quidditch, and they have the 3-headed guard dog. And then you come to the end where he's completed all his puzzles, and then he has to confront and defeat Professor Quirrell at the end. And without knowing it, I managed to spot some of these clues in my own Iron Viz. So it's a story about where the hero isn't Harry Potter, it's literacy, and how we're gonna save the world. So in the setup, we're talking about what is literacy, what does it mean to be illiterate. Later on, we're talking about really selling those benefits. What's the risk of not doing this? What's the challenges that we can face? Trying to build a bit of drama or something, importance around this metric. And then at the end, I suppose I'll rather hand off to the user, the audience here, just to say, hey, here's where we can go and defeat literacy, and here's your call to action of where we can go and support literacy programs around the world. So just to sum up on my sort of final build, it was a lot of different things, stories being brought together, but you saw that sort of trying to humanize data points, trying to make them available to those users, giving a bit of drama here and there, where we sort of say, here's some good stuff, here's some personal stories for people to make that a bit more relatable, and then kind of cliffhanger of how long is it going to take for all the rest of it, and then where to fix the problem. So that was my sort of presentation build. I have other options for you, because maybe a presentation isn't the right style for you or your audience. And so, thankfully, because of IronViz, we have 2 other great options for you, equal for any sort of audience. So Kimberly Scott's 2 countries, as I like to call it, the tall, dark and personal. Which she tells a very personal story of her own, like where she could have been if she had been living in another country. Really evolves on that tale, like really emotional, a lot of people were crying. I was like, yeah, that's amazing. And then you have CJ's, which I've kind of dubbed the hands-rustling Times, sort of part hand-rustling, part newspaper. Really amazing charts, really like different narrative of storytelling, and that was the really nice thing about IronViz, is that you had so many different styles, so many different techniques, certainly loads to learn from, for myself certainly as well. And there's QR codes as well, so you can go and visit those authors. Lastly, you may not be inspired by presentations at all, but you may like games. So I just want to give a quick shout out to the Games Like This community, which I help run. All kinds of games here, and such an amazing creative community. I've just picked out a few here. It just demonstrates such the breadth of what we've got. So we've got things like Skyrim, we've got Pokemon, we've got Minecraft, we've got Zelda, we've got Mega Man, we've got Street Fighter, lots of Mario, lots of Monopoly. Yeah, do check us out if you can. I just want to sum up and say thank you for your time. Yeah.
Has anyone got any questions for Will? Put your hand up.
Will, do you have stickers?
Yes, oh yeah, I've got loads of Games Like This stickers if you want one.
Any questions? No? What was your highlight from the IronViz experience, apart from what you've covered today?
Just meeting all the people. It was so much fun. Like, so many different people came up to me after that event, just saying hi, how you doing, just getting to know all kinds of different people from around the community.
Yeah, I think it's funny because everyone sees you on the stage and you don't really comprehend that until afterwards, and they're like, oh, I saw you on the stage.
You're that guy.
Like CJ,
it was at the airport as well. I was like, you're that guy. How did you find me here?
Any other questions? Michael?
Do you have any tips for concentrating on your build when so much is going on around you?
Just practice a lot. I would say I listen to a lot of loud noises on in my headphones just while I was building in practice. But yeah, really strong focus on just trying to cope with the distractions. But yeah, you can get things like crowds cheering and all that sort of thing on YouTube. So yeah.
CJ?
What are you going to spend 10 grand on?
He asked what you're going to spend 10 grand on. Or have you spent it already?
I haven't got it. Still waiting for the money. I'm supposed to have a house purchase at some point, so hopefully it'll go on that. But I got a few different things here and there. I'm gonna put the money towards, or people to put the money towards at least. But yeah, good places.
And you got is it £5 grand charity donation as well?
Yeah, I think that hopefully should have gone through.
Yeah. Right, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. I'll repeat the question as well.
When you made the maps as slides, did you find that somewhere, or did you make it go, oh yeah, this is good,
Everyone hear that?
Where did you find that resource or tool?
So how did you find the map resource, like what you just showed today? How did you discover that?
So it was basically out of frustration of going back and forth with all the different builds. It was racking my brain for any ideas. And I remembered the first Tableau training session I had was on version 8.1. And I remember they had it was a baseball player and stuff. They had a little little scatter plot around that. I thought, okay, there is a functionality where you could bring an image in. And then I discovered that tab where you could do an option, put a condition around. I thought, okay, we can make this into a PowerPoint deck, no problem.
So did you then, you built the backgrounds of your slides previously before the competition and put them in as images?
Yes.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you just built the actual vizzes as such? Like,
Yeah, and then place them all on top of
okay.
the background.
I completely missed that when I was watching it live.
There should be a video coming out sometime next week or so about showing the build, so I go walk through it with Mark.
Okay.
So.
Cool. Any other questions? No? Okay, well thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. Congratulations. Next up we have Priya, so just give us a few seconds to get back again.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the London Tug and Sarah for inviting me today. This is very surreal for me because not only is this my first in-person tug, but it's also the first time that I'm ever presenting to so many 3D people. I'm used to the virtual world now, so this is really weird, but amazing. And it's the first time I'm finally meeting all of you. So I'm very excited, and I also wanted to say I'm very happy to meet so many people who have inspired me and supported me over the last 2 years as well. So very, very happy to be here and excited to speak to you all today. So I thought I would start by going back in time a bit to when I was in school. And I remember during art lessons looking at my friends' work and thinking, wow, how did you do that? Because it was just so beautiful and impressive. And for me, I was never into art or design. In fact, I wasn't even good at it. And for me, I was actually more into creative writing, so stories and poetry. And when it came time for me to kind of choose what career path I wanted to go down, I decided to study computer science because I always had an interest in programming, and to be honest, I was heavily influenced in my love for The Matrix and Terminator, so that probably influenced my decision to go into programming as well. But I soon realized that it wasn't my passion and it wasn't what I wanted to do for a career. And once I graduated, I felt very stuck. And I remember just searching for jobs and trying to figure out what to do. And it was quite a scary time because it's a time of uncertainty. You spend so much time studying and then you don't actually know if you want to pursue in that. But then I eventually stumbled upon Tableau, and all of a sudden there's a tool that somehow combines data and creativity. And I found myself actually being excited about design and layout, and will it be a long form viz, or what font shall I use? Because I do love a good font, and I'm sure many of you feel the same way. And it's so funny for me to look back at how I used to be, and to remember that in the past I would have been afraid and just kind of avoided design-related things at all costs, but now it's such a big part of what I do with designing dashboards. So I really do think that data viz ignited my passion in design and also made me fall in love with it as well. And I thought it would be fun today to talk to you all about the lessons that I've learned in design, and to also give you some of my thoughts on finding your own personal style. So this is my first ever viz, and this was actually the first draft of my application viz to the data school. And I have to emphasize, first draft, this was not the one I submitted, okay? I have to preface with that. And it's all about street crime in Greater London. And when I look at this viz now, I see someone who was very excited, beginner in Tableau, just wanted to put everything they were learning onto the viz. So we have parameter actions, filter actions, sheet swaps, every color you could think of, it's all on this viz. And I also feel the need to actually address that pie chart. I will be talking about that later on. Don't worry, I will address that. But taking this viz into consideration, I'm now going to talk about 3 of the design lessons that I've learned since creating this viz about 2 years ago now. And let's start with color. So as you can see in this line chart, every single category of crime is in a different color. And all the different colors are, some of them are kind of similar to each other. So really, color isn't really adding anything to this particular chart. And I think color is super powerful for kind of adding emphasis to a chart, or to highlight something, or to kind of bring attention to something as well. So I've revamped that now, and as you can see, it's still a line chart, but this time I've highlighted the top line in blue, and the rest of the lines are grayed out. And instantly your attention is drawn to the blue line, and that's kind of the main focus. And I think because I used to use so much color before, I just toned it down completely. I've gone the complete opposite way, and I just try and kind of put color in certain places. So I'm going to show 2 more examples of some vizes that I created. So in the top dashboard, I used purple as the accent color. So in the top chart that you can see, I used it as a kind of filled bar chart. And then for the rest of the charts, I've used it to kind of highlight the top bar. And then in the bottom, I used red. So overall, the dashboard is very neutral, but then red kind of draws your attention to signify that something is wrong. So I really do think that color is super powerful, and it can be really good to add emphasis onto your vizes. So the second lesson I wanted to talk about is chart type. Now, I told you I'd bring up the pie chart again, because like I said, it needs to be addressed. Where do I begin? There's so many segments on this, obviously. There's 14 segments on this pie chart, and obviously it's very difficult to even compare each segment together. It's hard to see what's the top segment, the bottom segment, and so on. So I have revamped this now. And yes, the humble bar chart. And now you can instantly see which one is the top bar, which one is the last, and then everything in between. So comparisons are made easier. And again, I've actually highlighted the blue bar at the top, kind of linking to the first lesson from earlier. And it's just a lot easier to read that now as well. And so I guess an important rule or general rule of thumb is if it's not actually kind of answering questions, it's kind of creating questions, then probably it's not the right chart type, and it might be good to do a chart change. Now, the final lesson I wanted to mention is quite possibly one of my favorite design lessons that I've learned, and that is negative space. So if you're not familiar with negative space, it's essentially the kind of empty area between the elements on your viz. And I really do feel like it adds kind of order and flow to a visualization. It helps to add breathing room, it makes it easier to digest, more readable, and reduces that cognitive overload that you'd have if everything was cluttered. So this is a good example of a cluttered viz. And I'll explain why. Around the outer perimeter, sorry about the microphone noise there, but around the outer perimeter, you can see that the elements on the viz are very kind of close to the edges, and again, it looks quite cramped. And then kind of between each of the sections, again, there isn't really much spacing there, so it's hard to kind of see where each section begins and ends. And then actually within each of those sections as well, the elements are quite tightly packed together, and it's kind of hard to distinguish between them, and there's not really much breathing room. So I'm going to show you now 2 dashboard examples that I created more recently. And I'm going to show you as well the kind of differences compared to the first viz. So again, around the outer perimeter this time, you can see that there is kind of padding around that as well, much different than the previous viz. And then in between each section, it's now a lot easier to kind of tell where each section begins and ends, and also kind of the general flow and order. And then within each of the sections, there's padding as well. And that padding kind of allows you to have that breathing room, makes it easier to digest. And I remember when I first joined the community, I saw so many authors using negative space. And I just really loved how kind of modern and the effect that gave, and that made me want to also try and do that, and I'm still trying to do that and figure out the best way of doing it as well. So I really do think this is one of my favorite design elements that I've learned over the past 2 years. So all of these lessons, as well as being inspired by the community, helped me to gradually discover my unique style and also the design that I enjoyed creating. And your design lessons could look different from mine, and you might want to focus on different aspects of design. But the more you practice, the more you'll be able to see how you grow as a designer. And it's such an amazing process to kind of gradually figure out what you enjoy creating. So I always recommend just practicing and gaining that experience and building your Tableau public profiles. And I also recommend keeping your vizzes public as well. Don't hide them, because, because it's such a good way of tracking your progress, and anyone who comes and looks at your profile will just see how much you've grown by just scrolling down the page. And I also highly recommend not just confining yourself to only looking at other vizzes for inspiration. Be inspired by a movie poster and how fonts are used, or an advert and how images are used, or even kind of nature or the world around us and how they use color palettes. I have so many Pinterest boards for different aspects of design, from kind of layouts or color palettes or buttons. So feel free to build your own collections of design inspiration and look at them whenever you need a spark of inspiration when you're building your viz. And there's just so many different ways of finding your own unique style. So keep practicing, keep experimenting, but most importantly, don't forget to have fun along the way.
Thank you, Priya. I don't want to get too close in case there's any background noise. Yeah, thank you so much. Has anyone got any questions? Priya? I've got one while we wait. So imagine, let's say there's someone just here today that's just getting started, they're building vizzes like your first viz. What would be your advice for them to elevate their skills?
Definitely kind of taking part in initiatives, because back when Makeup Monday was a thing, that's kind of what I did every week to kind of hold myself accountable to keep practicing. But now we have Back to Viz Basics. So that's another really good one as well, or just any initiatives. There's so many, including games like this. Little plug there. Definitely do that, that's a fun one. But there's just so many. Oh, and of course, don't forget Sarah's as well. Iron Quest.
And we've got Sports Viz Sunday. We've got Sports Viz Sunday
Yes,
leaders in the house.
Sports Viz Sunday. So there's just so many different ways. So I would recommend taking a look at the Data Found Weekly Roundup, because it kind of lists them all at the bottom. So just take a look at there and just pick whatever interests you, and then try it out and post, get feedback. The community is just so encouraging and supportive. I've never really experienced anything like that before, and I'm still surprised that everyone is so nice, but it's just amazing. So never feel afraid, post, get feedback, and just keep practicing, keep trying and posting. If you ever need anything, reach out, always happy to help. And yeah, just have fun, because it really is fun.
And if someone wants feedback on their viz, like, where would you recommend they go?
So there's also Michelle Freeman. She has the Viz office hours, I believe. So that's another one. There's also Data Found feedback as well. Or just on your tweet, just say, would love some free feedback, and then people will give you feedback. So, or just reach out to people individually. I also have done that. Just someone that you look up to, just send them a message. I'm sure they'll respond and be more than happy to help.
Yeah, don't be afraid to do that. I think if they're too busy, they will say, I'm too busy, maybe you should reach out to this person instead.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out for feedback if you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Any questions before we move on? Yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever gotten upset by feedback that you got?
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'll just repeat the question. So the question was, have you ever gotten upset by feedback?
Yeah, definitely. So if you ever feel upset by feedback you get, don't worry, I felt the same way. I still get upset sometimes, but I feel like the more you get bad feedback, the more you kind of develop a kind of barrier to it, and you just take it for what it is, and then you work on it, and then you improve. You can only improve if you get feedback, and I feel like by getting feedback and knowing what you're doing well and what you can improve on, it really helps, and that's definitely what helped me with my Cover Monday biz review as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any question?
Yeah, sure, Zainab. I'll repeat it.
I was going to ask, because I think you have very unique style with your business, and something that I feel like I'm struggling with is feeling like everything that I do looks the same. It's just always very nice, right? Is that something that you've experienced, and do you have any tips to kind of make it, that makes your work excite you every single time?
Yeah, so the question was, Zainab was saying that often some people develop their own unique style and can worry that every biz kind of looks the same, so how would you overcome that?
First of all, thank you. So it's funny because I feel like mine gets repetitive as well, but I feel like there's so much going on in the community, so many people post things, so it's kind of hard not to be inspired by the new thing everyone is doing. So you can kind of take inspiration from that, and kind of like what I mentioned before, I find kind of if you're in a bubble of just business, it can kind of make you just stick there. So if you try and look elsewhere and see what else is being designed, even like websites, the modern design there I find really inspirational, or even websites or movies and stuff, the way certain like lighting or colors are used. Try and seek inspiration from everywhere. That's kind of what I have been trying to do as well. I'm kind of in a biz rut right now, hoping to break out of it soon. But we can brainstorm later as well.
All right, thank you so much, Priya. I really appreciate you coming to speak to us. It's a very So last but not least, we have Irene. Just give us a minute to get this working.
them the same, but it was also about what emotion we wanted to bring to our audience. So red is, for example, a really bold color. And so next, I'm just gonna introduce myself. So my professional background. So I have a law degree, and then I did a master's in management. Also, I used Tableau for the first time in 2020. Then I became a Tableau feature author. I work at Information Lab. I'm also a Tableau Ambassador. I was featured in the Tableau Gallery in 2020. Then we have some random facts about me that you might not know. So I kind of dabble in 5 languages. I speak 3 languages fluently, notably French, Italian, and I try with English. I had a rating of 5 as a Uber user, but it recently went down to 4.96. I think I was just chatting too much. So. I also visited a total of 20 countries. Okay, let's go back to our colors. So we have the wheel of colors. And have you ever wondered how artists pick such good colors? It's not just about art, actually. They use color theory. So we can see on the top right, we have our primary colors. So we have yellow, red, blue. So like our superheroes. And these colors can be used to create any of the other colors that we have within the wheel. And you might already know that from your primary education, but I think it's a good way to get reminded on how color works. Then we have the secondary colors, and essentially when we mix the primary and secondary colors, we can get our tertiary colors. But why would you want to use color harmony? So with color, we can evoke emotion and give context to our stories and visualization. And when we don't use color harmony, our visualization can feel somehow chaotic. So it's a good way to emphasize a specific story within your data. Then we have color qualities that we're going to discuss. So we have hue, value and saturation, and temperature. So let's first talk about hues. So a hue refers to the dominant color family. So for example, it doesn't include white, black, and gray. It refers to the origin of the color we see. So think of the hue as one of the 6 primary and secondary colors. So in other words, it's our yellow, orange, red, violet, blue, or green. Then when we talk about value and saturation, so we have our hue, but we can mix our hue with some white to get some tint, and this will give us a more lighter color. Or we could also mix our hue with gray, and this will give us tones. Or we could mix it with shades and get a stronger, richer color that way. So there's a lot of ways in which you can get different colors. Then we can also talk about cool colors and warm colors. And also, the different temperature give us different emotions. So warm colors are bright, so they might evoke emotion like happiness, for example, whereas cool colors might not give us the same emotion, but it might be more like calm emotion, for example. Now we have a nice game that we're gonna play. So I want you to focus on the little arrow we have in the middle of our screen, and I want you to have a look at the image. I'm gonna count like 15 seconds. Please just stare at the image. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And now I want you to blink multiple times. Just blink and just watch the wall. What colors do you see? Can someone tell me? So for what did the blue become? What about the black? Yeah, you said white. So we can see this is a good example of how complementary colors works. So because they bring so much contrast, and our eyes, when we look, for example, we look at orange, we want to see blue. So that's why they work actually well together. So how can we choose colors? There is different ways in which we can. So we could use complementary colors, for example. So when two colors are on the opposite side of the wheel, like in the example we have here. Or something that we could do is use monochromatic colors. So we use one color, but we use different saturation. Or we could use the neighbor colors within our color wheel. And this will give really, really nice design. And if you're a bit unsure, I'll suggest that you use complementary colors and their neighbors. There are also other ways in which you can choose colors. So we have, for example, triadic, as we've seen with our superheroes, or we could use split complementary as well. And now I have a really, really good example by Ellen Blackburn of really amazing color use. So if we look at this dashboard and we look at the top right, we can see that she has used blue, orange, pink, and violet. And if we look within our color wheel, we can see that so the opposite color to orange is blue. And then just next to our orange, we have our pink. So she's mixing the complementary colors with their neighbors' colors. And that gives this really, really nice design. Also, if we look at the first box that we have where it says severe impact, we can see that she's using this nice pinkish color. And if we look at the opposites of our wheel, we can see that a really nice contrasting color to our pink is this green color. And here, it works really well because Ellen made sure that it's also accessible for everyone. So we can see also a good thing that she did in this design is each of our different categories are represented by different color. So it's really easy for the user to just have a look at the story that we have within our data. So we can just follow the color and we'll find the story. Can we clap for Ellen? Then we have another example of color use. In here, this is a visualization I did, I believe, 1 year ago. And so at the top, it says percentage of people who say the relationship between the US and Germany are good or bad. So here I really wanted to emphasize the good. That's why I brought the color green for good. And also if you look at the titles, you can see on the German side, we have some gray part, but we have a small portion that is green. And what I meant by that was to say that the majority of Americans has a good perception, whereas for the German it was the opposite. So you can really use color to also emphasize facts and give more context within your visualizations. Then we have a tweet from me. So I think that colors have emotion, and we associate colors with a particular emotion, so it's important to keep that in mind when we design. So if we have a look at color and their traditional meanings, so this is just based on Western ideas, so it might not reflect in all different culture, but for example, red is typically associated with bold, energetic, passion, determination, whereas orange is enthusiasm, yellow, attentive, safety, energy. So we have different meaning when we use colors. So here we have an example of a chart, and we have the best 3 products by sales. I think when we design charts, it's also great to start with a gray color, and then you can add more use to it. So now we have our best 3 product by sales that we can easily spot within our graph. But we could even go a step further. We could actually also show it within our title. And finally, actually, if we want to emphasize the fact that it's positive because it's our best product, we could use the color green, and that will change the aspects of our visualization. Also, color can be associated with quantitative values. So the more intense the color is, the higher the value is. For example, we have this map of sales data. We can see where the color pink is more intense, we have more sales. Also, it's good to have color consistency. So again, I'm using the orange and blue. I didn't know which color to pick, so I went to the basic ones. But in this visualization, I really try to make it easy for the user to follow around the story. So we have basics and blue origin. And if we look at the chart, it's really easy. You don't even have to, even if you spot, you can see, okay, the orange color is basics. So I can just follow the story really easily. Okay. So some consideration to have when using colors are who is your hero within your data. So we've seen that when it comes to Spider-Man, he was in red, so it was really easy to spot him. So we want to use the same principle within our data. We want to find a hero. Also, what is the story that is worth telling? We don't want to use too much color, as Priya said. And we also want to define what the color means. Because we could see a color, but if there is no context, then it's really hard to understand. We can use color theory to create pleasing palettes. And you might be able to create incredible visualization like Ellen. You can use color consistently throughout your visualization, and this will make the user understand your dashboard more easily. And finally, get inspired. You can get inspired by nature. You can collect the colors of nature and just adding them into your visualization. So I have additional resources that I'm just gonna show you. So we have this nice color wheel from Canva, and this will allow you to pick. You can pick all the different types of color harmony. So you have complementary, more chromatic, and so on. And you can just pick it based on the color. So that's a really nice tool that you can use. or we have this one here as well that can help you choose a nice color harmony. We also have this nice blog that I discovered that Ludovic Tavernier shared with me recently, and it's really, really good. So I would advise you to look out for Lisa Charlotte. Is really good with colors. And one of my favorite videos is how to use colors in your data visualization by Cole. So I would advise you to check that. And let's not forget about accessibility. So according to colorblind awareness, colorblindness affects 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women. So it's important to make sure that your visualization are accessible to a lot of people. So to do that, you can use Codelists, for example. This is a nice tool where you can check your, you can simulate color blindness, for example. Then we have this other tool that is called Color Brewer. It also gives you some palettes and also palettes that are colorblind friendly. And finally, we have a nice blog about how to use colorblind friendly palettes to make your shots more accessible. Okay, thank you everyone. That's it from me.
Thank you, Irene. That was awesome. Has anyone got any questions, Irene? I've got one question. What would you do if, let's say, you're working with a customer or a client and they really want to use a red, amber, green color palette and it's not accessible? How would you overcome that? What colors would you recommend they use instead?
So I'll try to show them how it will look like with gray maybe, but also I might emphasize the fact that we can use other indicators if we don't use colors. Maybe if we're showing a growth, we can use an arrow instead, or another sign so that it's accessible for everyone.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. All right, that concludes this evening. So we're finished with the talks. I think we've got some food at the back here, and there'll be some drinks as well. We've also got some swag, so give us a few minutes to get it set up, and then feel free to help yourselves. I will be sending out a survey at the end of this event. We'd love to get your feedback and just really understand from you what you'd like to see at future events. We are really keen to run another one of these very soon, and we're looking to see if we can run one at the Salesforce Tower. Slightly more space over there. So just bear with us, and we'll be in touch about the next event. But thanks for everyone for coming.